or low, but access is very high, which means that you can take many people and just like have a lower level of intake. But what is more or less advisable by now is a model where cost is minimal, maybe not low, but not too expensive. Quality remains high and access is high. And this is a model that we think, or at least I think, would be advisable for developing countries. And this model has been adopted for OU Malaysia and by OU Malaysia and OU Sri Lanka. And basically this is on the same model that the eventual or hopeful Open University of Mauritius will be built. So this is a reason why if you want to increase access while playing this iron triangle, as calls it now, it became some kind of brand mark. One needs to create more diversified contents, preserve quality and standards, and maintain reasonable cost. And if you want to create diversified content, you need HR, which are not usually available in developing countries. So this is where OER are coming in the picture. So why should we recycle? I'm taking the example of the SIDECAP project because this is one, well, first of all, this has been one of the organizers of the workshop, and also, just well, you've been told this morning that the project is led by the Open University, and the partners are the Islands and Islands Millennium Institute, the University of South Pacific, the University of West Indies, and University of Mauritius. So the objectives of the SIDECAP are twofold. One is to actually develop new online courses out of OERs we proposed, and the second one is to just like jump at a meta level and try to understand the way we've been doing it and propose a methodology to do it. So here is some kind of cycle of how OER can be reused and just like repurposed. And as you will see in the next slide, this is precisely what we're doing, because that slide, the previous one, wasn't mine. It was borrowed from Frank's presentation, which is an OER, and that slide has been repurposed, repainted in blue, and blah blah blah, which is like just like not only saying that we should do it, but doing it actually in the real time, in real life. Now, how can we do that? How can we recycle resources, and what would be a rationale for that? If we consider that from a social constructivist perspective, this is more or less the same thing as used auto parts. Just like you need to have a car that works and you don't precisely have the new parts to do it, and you just want to just adjust things that exist and just do it so you can have a whole that functions. And we think that capacity building and learning occur as a side effect of the process of doing it and not as a product. Though the process of recycling by itself is something which is interesting if we consider learning and so on. From an activity theory perspective, this is unreadable, but I know, you know, the thing is that learning can be considered as creating new knowledge and going from some kind of old activity, which was basically instructional design in the past, to a new kind of activity. This is there, you can see new object, new activity, there is old object and old activity. So we go from there, we just expand the scope of what's been done so far, and basically building new courses out of OER is there, which is, in the context of transformation, some kind of part of radical exploration of knowledge that exists, but transformational knowledge that exists into new one, and just like this kind of reprocessing, sort of. From a critical thinking perspective, as Roland Barthes was saying in French, you cannot read it, but I know it's there, and I've been trying to translate it in English. The superative critical thinking is its capacity to define a whole by a new unit, to be defined by a principle of infinite circularity, where each word can be defined only by other words. Basically, the idea is just you take something and you just talk about it. And then you comment on it, and then you add value to it, and then you reword it, and this is it. So from that thing, we can consider that this Magritte painting is an OER on which we can comment. And there are several levels of representation and so on. We don't get into too sophisticated critics of painting, but basically that could be considered either as a pipe, or as a reusable learning object, or as an OER, and so on. This is what critical thinking is about also. And from a communication perspective, we just go on this idea of commenting on things, saying that anything that goes public can be commented upon, which means that the comments are part of the value addition on it. So that means that I can comment on Frank's slide, and I can comment on many things. And this thing has been also mentioned yesterday during the discussion, when you say that adding, I think Alan mentioned that yesterday, about the idea of recontextualizing by references, which is more or less the same process as writing research papers, basically. Means when you have an OER, you can just like build on that and add references that just like put them in context, or just like make it situated in a given context. So is that allowed? I mean, can we do that? The example I wanted to take is one that doesn't exist any longer. That was something that was on in the 90s. It's been a big project located at Stanford University, but what is interesting about it is the way they formalize the process. That means what? They give, they had a library of thousands of Java applets in several domains that you could use. But what is interesting is that when using that, since some of those were open resources, but some were not, but some were on the web without being open, that means that you have to fill in a form where you give the URL, the author of the applet, and the submitter. Since the submitter is not the author, the submitter is just commenting on that and just saying that I know this, I know it exists, and I can make pedagogical review of that, technical review of that, means I can make comments on that. Out of this transformation process, they can build non-formal programs, but those programs are still not formal, which means that there is no word so far, and we don't know precisely what to do with it. So what are the issues? The issues is that we go from non-formal towards accredited academic programs on the one hand, and the second one is to go from passive learners, as the tradition wants learners to be, towards people that are going to have the freedom and feel free to transform existing resources which are considered to be free. So, with the issue would be to define quality assurance and accreditation frameworks that will allow to go from non-formal to established academic programs on the one hand, and the other issue is to define pedagogical approaches that will make these passive learners into proactive and creative developers.